It's such a dumb point of view to advance. It's like this is unironically no different than the same argument right now, which is, well, if Maduro cares about the safety of Venezuelans, then he should just like step aside, right? He should just go escape, and Machado should be the leader of Venezuela, the rightful leader of Venezuela. Anyway, let's get to the U.S. Seizing a Venezuelan oil tanker as anti-Maduro campaign escalates. We're going to be talking about that. There's also the accused Charlie Kirk killer as well. Fox News talking about how he has no remorse. We'll talk about Erica Kirk doing a town hall, the censorship laws that might be kicking in Congress. And much
U.S.
more.
troops seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela a day after U.S. fighter jets flew over the Gulf of Venezuela, the closest the U.S. has come to the country's airspace. Attorney General Pam Bondi released videos showing U.S. forces rappelling from helicopters and pointing weapons at sailors. Bondi claimed the tanker had been used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. President Trump confirmed the raid while speaking with reporters at the White House.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large, largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. Well, what happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman, just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it's going?
Follow it. Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're going to, I assume we're going to keep the oil.
The Venezuelan government denounced the action, calling it blatant theft and an act of international piracy. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro spoke in Caracas Wednesday.
Anyone who wants Venezuelan oil must respect the law, the Constitution, and national sovereignty, and get down to producing, invest, and sell our oil. Venezuela, an oil colony? Never again. Neither a colony nor slaves.
He also started singing, "Don't Worry, Be Happy." The U.S. seizure of the oil tanker comes as the Pentagon ramps up its military buildup in the Caribbean ahead of possible strikes on Venezuela. Since September, the U.S. has carried out more than 20 deadly strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific, though they've never offered evidence. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to the right-wing Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado. On Tuesday night, hundreds of protesters marched in Oslo to condemn the selection of Machado, who supported threats against the Venezuelan government. In October, she dedicated the Peace Prize to President Trump. Machado did not attend the prize ceremony on Wednesday, but later appeared in Oslo waving to supporters from the balcony of her hotel. She spoke at the Norwegian parliament today. CNN reports the United States gave her support to travel to Oslo from...
Fucking sick, man. That's awesome. Seems like she's definitely the good guy in this story. You know? Remember, Ansar seized the ships off their coastline to implement a blockade on Israel because of the genocide. They're terrorists. USA steals Venezuelan oil off their coastline to agitate them into war. They're terrorists. Who's the terrorist here? I think Israel and America are acting like terrorists. And there is so much mainstream media support on this. So much. All the way from the Jake Tappers of the world to CBS News, and they're presenting this woman who's literally fucking being like, please bomb the shit out of my country. I want death and destruction in Caracas. I want dead babies in Caracas as like supposedly a good person here.
Venezuela, where she'd been in hiding. She apparently flew from Bangor, Maine to Oslo.
We're joined by Alejandro Velasco, associate professor at New York University, where he's a historian of modern Latin America. Velasco is a former executive director of NACLA Report on the Americas.
Someone in chat says she does not want that. There's so much that's not said. She does not want that. Is there a State Department villain that you won't dick ride? Is there? Like, me being critical of Maduro doesn't even fucking play a role in this analysis. It's so crazy. There's better opposition leaders in Venezuela, from what I understand, than even Machado. But you have to fucking literally go, no, she's the best one because America chose her as the best one. And the reason why America chose her as the best one is because she literally said Venezuela's struggle is like Israel's struggle. Okay, please, Benjamin Netanyahu, aid and assist in me becoming the puppet leader. Going to business conferences or speaking to the business conferences in Florida, being like, we're going to let foreign capital take over all of the state assets. We're gonna let you literally rape the ground, rape and pillage. Okay, under my watch, as long as you just murder enough fucking people and forcibly take out Maduro. Your background as a potential Venezuelan does not change this calculation at all either, by the way. I don't do any of that fucking standpoint theory bullshit. Oh, you're Venezuelan, so I guess I should be in agreement with you unconditionally about America literally trying to actively invade a foreign nation.
And the author of Barrio Rising, Urban Popular Politics and the Making of Modern Venezuela. He was born and raised in Venezuela. Welcome back to the show, Alejandro. So if you could comment on these latest developments, the U.S. Coming the closest it has to invading Venezuela's airspace, and then also Machado receiving the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, no, for sure. But on the one hand, you have to think of it as an escalation on two fronts. The most apparent front, of course, is the military escalation, even though they're calling it a legal maneuver, more of a high seas stakes kind of operation. In fact, the United States has amassed the greatest number of troops in the 21st century in the Caribbean. And so this absolutely escalates this kind of war of chicken with the Venezuelan government. But it's also, in some ways, an escalation of illegality. The United States has in the past seized Venezuelan assets. It now controls millions of Venezuelan Citgo assets that it is essentially kidnapped for ransom in the United States. The UK has also held Venezuelan gold in the wake of 2019's crisis that saw Juan Guaido become sort of interim president, self-proclaimed. And so that kind of escalation is very significant and worrisome. It's been interesting that the Venezuelan government's reaction has been really disciplined. They've not fallen into the trap of trying to be goaded into some kind of response that would surely bring greater military action on the part of the United States. Now, on the other hand, of course, you have the Maria Corina Machado ceremony. She had said that she would not leave Venezuela until the final battle is won. And so now the question is, will she be able to return, or will she run the fate of many Venezuelan politicians in the opposition who've lived out their promise in exile?
But was she under a travel ban? She'd apparently not seen her own children. Her daughter received the prize in her stead. She had not seen the kids for a year or possibly two. What kind of ban was she under? So
the Venezuelan government had an arrest warrant on her. And so they had alleged that she had violated campaign laws, political actions as well. And so certainly she was under hiding. And of course, her concern was if she was going to be detained, then she might suffer the consequences of torture or other kinds of violations. But of course, her profile is so significant, it's so high profile that it's also somewhat far-fetched to imagine that the Venezuelan government would in fact detain her.
I wasn't in the room when it started moving, okay? I don't know what he just saw, perhaps a ghost, but I was not in the fucking room when that shit started moving, okay? That's strange.
Then in fact see what she's doing now, which is to leave.
Let me play Maria Corina Machado speaking at the Norwegian Parliament today.
I am very hopeful Venezuela will be free.
God, I fucking hate how insincere these animals in suits actually are. Okay? They are some of the most insincere motherfuckers out there. Oh, we love liberalism. We love human rights. We are the defender of human rights. Nope. Here are some choice words from Bonzer Barry on Machado. Machado is a bloodthirsty Zionist who called Netanyahu days after winning the peace prize to praise him for the genocide in Gaza and starting a war with Iran, claims that Hamas operates in Venezuela. Her party has signed multiple cooperation agreements with Likud since 2020. Recently said the struggle of Venezuela is the struggle of Israel. Plans to move the Venezuelan embassy to Jerusalem. Praises Trump for killing. Recently spoke at the far-right Patriots for Europe rally with Geert Wilders and Marine Le Pen. Also has spoken to American business owners saying, if you put me as a puppet leader, if you give me power in Venezuela, I will literally use that power to sell off all of our assets to you for pennies on the dollar.
And we will turn a country into a beacon of hope and opportunity of democracy. And well, we will welcome not only the Venezuelans that have been forced to flee, but citizens from all over the world that will find a refuge, as Venezuela used to be decades ago.
On Tuesday night, hundreds of protesters marched in Oslo to condemn the selection of Machado for the Nobel Peace Prize.
You are not covering this correctly from a Norwegian perspective. The fuck do you mean? What do you want me to say? I can only look at the liberal leadership in Europe and how little they give a fuck about the theoretical values that liberalism is supposed to demonstrate around the world. I think you're joking, though.
Because she supported Trump's threats against Venezuela. In October, she dedicated the Peace Prize to Trump. This is Lena Alvarez of the Norwegian Solidarity Committee for Latin America in Oslo.
We are here at a demonstration organized together with a broad alliance of Norwegian solidarity and peace organizations, where we are highlighting that the Nobel Prize is being used to legitimize military intervention. This year's Nobel Prize winner has not distanced herself from the interventions and the attacks we are seeing in the Caribbean, and we are stating that this clearly breaks with Alfred Nobel's will.
So, Professor Velasco, if you can comment on this, and then talk about this tanker. President Trump boasted it's the largest tanker ever seized.
Yeah, it's hard to...
How are the anti-globalists not flipping their shit right now? 2016 Republicans would be furious. What are you talking about? The anti-globalist position by the Republicans has always been it's fake as fuck. What the fuck? No, they wouldn't be. And the amount of anti-imperialist Americans is shrinking every single day, okay? That's just rhetoric. I don't understand if the Nobel laureate do not support Trump. Why are they supporting her? I don't know. They don't support Trump on the optics. Or they might actually support Trump next year. We don't even know that, first of all. But also, secondly, perhaps they do support Trump, and maybe you'll see next year. Or even if they don't support Trump, it's only on the optics front. They still support the American ambitions.
Parse the Nobel Prize Committee's selection and then how they have proceeded over the last few weeks since the announcement. The history of the Nobel Prize being awarded to politicians and opposition politicians is...
Sorry for spamming, but I don't get why they don't actually use the election fraud allegations as a part of the consent manufacturer, and they're just too lazy to explain it to their apathetic base. Yes. I feel like if it was a liberal intervention, if it was a liberal government doing the intervention, they would hammer that over and over and over again. Okay? But because it's a Republican intervention, they don't even feel the need to do so. Remember, different governments and different administrations sell to their base the actions that they're taking, even if the actions that they're taking are identical, the way that they sell it is different. Okay? The way that they sell it is different.
Let's just say not a very storied one. More recently, of course, you have Barack Obama, who had been awarded the prize, and before that, Aung San Suu Kyi, the Burmese politician. And at the time, they said that these were more aspirational awards for hopefully what would come if they, in fact, reached the counted. But in both of those cases, of course, we did not see peace. We saw, in the case of, unfortunately, of Obama, war, and of Aung San Suu Kyi, an authoritarian turn. So part of the question here is, why would the Nobel Prize Committee take another another chance on an opposition politician who has been so vocal in requesting and demanding an armed intervention of her country. Even, of course, as on the other hand, she would say, like, well, we want peace and we want democracy. This is what the Norwegians, the prime minister conversation was like. So that's on the one hand. What is going on with the Norwegians who have in the past tried to broker some kind of negotiation with the Venezuelan government? But in terms, of course, of the oil question, it's a kind of a two-handed approach. You have this seeming carrot of, well, we seek peace and bringing the Norwegians along. But on the other hand, we're seizing ships. We are launching military aircraft, fighter jets, right literally off the coast of Venezuela.
This Nobel Peace Prize winner is crazy, but Maduro's still bad, right? He's a corrupt dictator that has repressed a lot of civil dissent with his leadership. Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay, what's worse, dude? What's worse? Maduro remaining in power or American bombs falling on Caracas? Or even if it's like literally not American bombs falling on Caracas, but like they somehow get to him, they unseat him, and they put this fucking psycho, this American stooge, and then you'll actually see the real fucking suppression, okay? Then you'll see the actual suppression. Because obviously, regardless of Maduro's popularity waning over the course of the past decade or so, and partially because of the sanctions, partially because of mismanagement of the economy, all this stuff, okay? There will be a lot of fucking discontent in the Venezuelan population against the new leadership and American intervention. How do you think that discontent will be suppressed? How? Waning popularity, 1/4 of the country left, bro? Yes, it's virtually impossible to explain to someone what it looks like when your economy is being directly attacked. It's such a fucking dumb point of view to advance. It's like, this is unironically no different than the same argument right now, which is, well, if Maduro cares about the safety of Venezuelans, then he should just like step aside, right? He should just go escape, and Machado should be the leader of Venezuela, the rightful leader of Venezuela. Why? Because the alternative is we'll fucking kill you. That's not a fucking negotiation. That's not a negotiation at all. Do you think having her there may at least improve the economy? I don't know. Did Pinochet improve the Chilean economy? The fuck? What are we doing? These interventions have already happened. Okay? It's not like this is a new and unique thing. It blows my mind because it's not that complicated of a story here.
All in an effort to try to goad the Venezuelan government to a kind of misstep that would then justify some military intervention.
But what do we know about this ship? The U.S. officials, of course, say the ship had been previously linked to the smuggling of Iranian oil. The final destination of the ship was indeed Asia. Can you talk about the claim that the Venezuelan state-owned oil company, PDVSA, is part of a global black market network?
So Venezuela's oil, and PDVSA in particular, has been sanctioned since the first Trump administration. And those, as we call sectoral sanctions, are part of a maximum pressure campaign on the part of the U.S. to try to force the Venezuelan government out of power. They, of course, withstood that pressure. But it does mean that Venezuelan oil and Venezuelan oil interests and assets abroad as well as domestically are under threat. The paradox here is that Venezuela continues to sell oil to the United States. So on the one hand, we have the seizure of a tanker, and then other tankers that are just finding their way to the United States by way of licenses to be sold in the U.S. market. And so, part of this is this larger narrative of Venezuelan narco-terrorism and this axis between Iran and Venezuela and Cuba. But on the other hand, you have the continuation.
I take it back, actually. When I said, then you will see real repression, you won't. Because it'll be relegated to the fucking back pages. No one will talk about it. When the Venezuelan population rises up against the puppet leadership, selling the land off and doing ruthless things, far worse than even Maduro has done, you will not hear about it at all because American media will not cover it because Venezuela will be commanded by an American puppet. Okay? Venezuela will be commanded by an American puppet. And we will get to do whatever the fuck we want to do with Venezuelan assets, Venezuelan resources, and therefore we will have won.
Of politics as normal. So it's hard, extremely difficult.
Why are we still explaining this in 2025? Because I'm only one person. And not only am I one person, but I'm one person with a position that is rarely ever represented in American media in general. And when represented, it meets a lot of fucking aggression, even from people who are self-described progressives, self-described leftists. And when I push back on the naysayers, those self-described leftists become self-described haters.
To parse what the actual intentions are.
So let's talk about Venezuela having the world's largest oil reserves. It's under threat from the United States, and followed by Colombia. On Wednesday, President Trump threatened Colombian President Petro.
Colombia is producing a lot of drugs. They have cocaine factories that they make cocaine, as you know, and they sell it right into the United States. So he better wise up, or he'll be next. He'll be next, too.
But don't worry, guys. When Donald Trump inevitably moves on to Colombia, I'm sure there will be like a half-hearted response to how Gustavo Petro has actually ruined Colombia. And they shit up, too. You'll be like, oh, well, I'm a Colombian living in the United States of America, and I think Gustavo Petro needs to be forcibly taken out of power. Why won't they actually... Why won't they actually put in charge a reasonable person, you know? And then you can tell me about how leftistly this is the right thing to do.
And I hope he's listening. He's going to be next.
I hope he's listening, he says about Petro. He is going to be next. He also brought in narco trafficking. It's important to note that in this past week, he pardoned a major narco trafficker, right? The former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was sentenced in a U.S. court to 45 years in prison, served about a year of that, accused of bringing in, using all the levers of the Honduran state, military, police, helping to facilitate 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. So talk about Colombia. And
I mean, Colombia has been nothing if not a stable partner for the United States in terms of drug interdiction. It continues to be a major oil drug producer and exporter, although Ecuador has now become far more. And of course, Ecuador has a friendly ally to the Trump administration as president currently, and so they're not talking about Ecuador. But you know what this demonstrates is that it's certainly on the part of Trump, but also on the part of Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and others in the U.S. government, Venezuela is not the only target. It's other Latin American governments, and questions about narco-terrorism are really subterfuge claims, in fact, to get rid of leftist governments in the region. Right? This is what we see with Colombia. We've seen other threats to Mexico as well, which has a leftist government as well. So this has a lot to do with ideology, despite the claims that it's impact about drugs.
Before you go, I wanted to ask you about what is a national story, but also has international significance. This Miami mayoral race, Florida voters electing a Democratic mayor, and the first woman, for the first time, a Democratic mayor in 30 years. In a stunning upset, the former county commissioner, Eileen Higgins, received about 59% of the vote, defeating the Cuban-born Republican Emilio Gonzalez, who'd been endorsed by Trump. How does this relate to what we're seeing now? Trump reportedly has been extremely affected by these two races this week. One was her upset victory, and another, a smaller race in Georgia, in a Trump region. State legislator, Democrat, won this time around. But what about Miami?
It's massive, and especially in the worldview of Trump and his ties to Florida in particular, but his sense that Florida was now in the bag for Trump, and this tremendous upset, and it wasn't even close, right? And we're talking massive, margin, suggests that perhaps the message, the bellicose message that the Cuban American community, most of the Cuban American community in South Florida.
Bring up Rubio in this, the Secretary of State, and his role and what's happening, Cuban American from Miami.
Yes, this sort of staid Cold War era discourse being brought up again, what it suggests is that it's perhaps run a bit of its course, and the interests of people in Miami, as elsewhere in the country, especially Republican voters, is much more fixated on what are you doing for me here at home? Why are we worrying about interventions abroad? What are you doing for us here at home? And this is a tremendous warning, I think, to the Trump administration, and Trump in particular, that the focus has to shift to domestic interests, especially around the economy, rather than these war games with tremendously high stakes in the Caribbean.
So no more I will vote for Trump song. Someone asked in the chat, would you say people in red states are starting to notice and someone realized that Trump's policies don't serve them? No. I think there were people who didn't vote, or people who have voted for Democrats in the past, or people who like took a shot in the dark for Donald Trump, or Republican voters who are just comfortable with Donald Trump that didn't go out and vote at all. But I don't think there is like major buyer's remorse. There might be. All right. But I don't think things have gotten as bad as they should for there to be major buyer's remorse. Also, the alternatives aren't necessarily super telegenic, super charismatic, super bold, in the right direction, speak their language. You know what I mean? I think we're still stuck on the boundaries of the culture war, which obviously favors the Republicans quite a bit. Like, Democrats are still playing a game of politics that does not favor them. So no matter how much Donald Trump's policies directly fuck over the Republicans themselves, they can still lean into, they can still very much lean into like, well, at least we're still dominating. We still got culture war stuff. The alternative is stupid and liberal and silly. You know, that's what it is.